Not hearing anything.
Something went wrong. Please try again later. I can't try again later. I gotta try again now. Oh, what's going on here?
Don't we love technology?
And when they went to the queen to tell her her subjects had no bread, do you know what she said?
Let them eat cake.
Who took the bomb?
We're getting screwed, man. Every time we turn around, we're getting screwed. Oh, the revolution's going to be through podcasting for sure. That's the only way we talk. It's the little guys that take the brunt of everything. It's got to stop. Peasants, man. We're just peasants. Every one of us. You watch those old movies, you see the peasants in the background with the kings and queens walking around. We're those people. We're those people.
Woo! Good evening, Liberty lovers. How you doing? It's not morning time. It's hard not to say good morning, peasants.
I know. You're used to that.
Every morning when I hear that intro, I never watch it because I'm like last second getting everything done, putting my headphones in, grabbing my mic. A lot of times it's literally I'm, the kings and queens walking around and I'm like grabbing my mic at the last possible second. So I'm always out of breath when good morning, peasants.
Yeah. And you're typing it in the messages too.
Typing it in. Yep, absolutely. All right. Welcome, Reason 411. Glad you made it. That is awesome. We are going to go ahead and drop the link if anybody wants to join us in studio, in camera, remotely, of course. The link is in the chat, and we'll drop it again there a time or two as people show up. But we had a lot of viewers last week that came in, obviously, after the show posted. It was pretty good. I think it was pretty awesome. So that's really good. I'm glad people joined it. So if you're not catching it live, you can catch it on replay at the Peasants Perspective channel on Rumble, YouTube, and probably everywhere else it ends up uploading. So lots of fun. How was your week this week, Lisa?
It's been good. This week has been all about getting all of my affairs in order and thinking about the stuff that I've got loose ends on and cleaning them up and all of the kind of, I don't know about you, but I haven't been really diligent about keeping track of paperwork and business dealings that need my attention. So it triggers a lot of stuff when I go back to figure it all out and clean it up and organize it. Memories of all the stuff we've done, how we've gotten where we are. It's fraught with a lot of kind of hairballs.
I know this week I was like, well, we didn't get 1099s. And you were like,
I know.
Uh-huh.
I know. I was like, oh, okay. I guess we need to do that. Yeah, that's part of what. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's pretty fun. Yeah, it's I am not a paperwork guy in general. That's not my forte. So yeah, I often find myself doing quarterly roundups where I'm, spending a night, chuck the Mountain Dew all night long, trying to do my registers and stuff like that. It's no fun, but it's got to be done.
Yeah, and it feels so good when you have everything organized in a way that you can defend should anything come your way that you have to defend.
Yeah, it makes a difference. So I saw something this week that I thought I would share. This is I got a couple things. Got a little bit of a direction we can go today. Okay, so look at this little picture here. Let me add it to the stage. Okay, so let's see. What's the best way to do this for you and I? How can we do that? No, don't want that.
Yeah,
We're learning as we go. Here we go. There we go. No, you don't have to turn your camera off. Stay on. Okay, cool. So can someone please explain this? Licensing liberty. So this is a definition that comes from a court case, Murdoch versus Pennsylvania. No state shall convert a liberty into a license and charge a fee thereof. And then another one coming from Shuttlesworth versus the city of Birmingham, Alabama. If the state converts a right, a liberty, into a privilege, the citizen can ignore the license and fee and engage in the right liberty with impunity. So how did we end up with fishing licenses, hunting licenses, driver's licenses, drone licenses, barber licenses, tattoo licenses, travel agent licenses, massage licenses, contractor license, marriage license, camping permit, construction permit, solar panel permit, livestock permit, street vendor permit, concealed carry permit, burn permit, protest permit, photography permit, vehicle registration fees, boat registration fees, bike registration fees, building permit fees, parking meter fees, toll road fees, land use fees, firearm license fee, park entry fee, liquor license fee, and I have a pet permit fee that's not on there too that we usually end up having to get. Isn't that crazy? Aren't all
It
those
really is crazy. And you know what's not on there? They don't ask us to put the cameras up, right? Like there's cameras all over the place, but we're not consenting to that.
Yeah.
But we're consenting to all of this.
Oh my goodness. I saw a hilarious video. I watch a lot of those First Amendment auditor videos, right? See how they do. And there's one guy standing outside of a bank and he's on the sidewalk, like on the right of way. He's not on private property at all. He's on the right of way and he's filming, and bank manager comes out and he's all mad. Hey, what are you filming for? My customers are uncomfortable. They don't want to be on camera. And the guy pauses the video because it's edited, right? And he's like, except for that camera, that camera, that camera, that camera. There's like six cameras. The guy, my customers don't want to be on camera. He's like, they're on camera everywhere. Mine's not tied into the system. He's like, what are you talking about? Did you tell them they were already on camera? Anyway,
Right.
the cop comes and tells the bank manager, well, he's on the sidewalk. He can film whatever he wants, Anyways.
It's insane.
Totally.
I mean, literally putting this all together, licensing liberty. If you want to do any of these things, you're going to have to get a license or you're breaking the law.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. And of course it gets worse too, because when it actually comes to real life and you actually have to, deal with this stuff. For example, here's this little video here. I'm still learning this particular platform. So I want to add this. There we go. Okay, so take a look at this. This is a woman who, and I run into this all the time. In fact, we just ran into this at the Epic Trust because we put an offer in on a lot, and the people who own the lot had planned on turning it into a landscaper construction laydown yard where you park your equipment, fence it off, park your equipment. And it wasn't zoned right. And they'd already bought the lot before they realized they couldn't do what they wanted to do, right? Because everybody thinks if you buy the land, you can do whatever you want. Clearly not. Anyway, so this woman went out and bought a huge chunk of land thinking she could build a couple tiny houses for her kids. Turns out, not so much the case. So let's play this here.
And if you own 37 acres of land, the government will still control your land. Did y'all know that? Because I didn't know that. And I just walked into the municipal building and I'm going to put a tiny home on my property. And he immediately said, nope, you can't do that. I was like, what? What are you talking about? I have 37 acres. There's plenty of room to put a tiny home. Nope, you can't do that. You're zoned to have one house on your property. I'm like, dude, my property is massive. Okay. And this is for my kids' future to have a tiny home. Ultimately, I want three little tiny homes in the back corner of our property. Nope, you can't do that. What do you mean you can't do that? No. Zoning is planned for. I'm like, what plans does the government have for my property? I don't understand what you're saying to me. And you could tell this guy had never gotten any pushback because I was pushing back. Like, you're telling me I can't put a tiny home on my property for my children to live in when they're 18, 19, 20, young adults. What are you talking about? No, it's not zoned for that. Okay, so rezone it. And then he's like, well, there's a floodplain here. And I was like, he said 100-year floodplain. I said, well, what year are we on? He couldn't tell me. He's like, it doesn't work like that. I was like, what do you mean? What year are we on? Because we put a drain tile in, so I know it's not flooding back there. Okay. So what year is your 100-year floodplain plan? On the map of my property, I can tell you it doesn't flood right here. It doesn't work like that. I'm like, then how does it freaking work? Okay. So you're telling me the 100-year floodplain plan is really forever floodplain plan, according to what you guys think about my own property. Is that what you're telling me? And then he's like, well, you have to rezone, but they're not going to approve you. I was like, why wouldn't they approve me? It's my property. So it's absolute madness. And let me tell you, he was speechless. And then he ended up giving me contact information to rezone my property so that way I could ultimately build at least one other home on my land. What the actual F? I had no idea. I thought I was going to go in there and just say, like, give me the form so I can build a tiny home. And they're like, nope, watch. Wait, I will come back to you because guarantee you. The hill I die on is when I'm building 3 tiny homes on my 5-acre plot that I rezoned so that my 3 children can have a space on our family compound. I'm not settling. God bless y'all.
That's pretty good, isn't it? Isn't that like that is I've seen it. My wife overheard that clip and she's like, whenever I hear that, I just think, good luck, sister. It's like, yeah, no kidding. Are you muted? I think you're muted. I'm all by myself here.
I'm sorry. There
Oh,
you
now
go.
you're
It's
back.
better. Okay.
Now you're back. Yeah, so I watch that and I just think, oh my gosh, that's so perfect. You're right. You know, you buy a house, 37 acres. There's plenty of room for houses here. It ain't a subdivision, darling.
Dang. But it's so typical that you don't realize until you start going down these roads what you're up against. And you try to be prepped for everything, but you don't know. It's like you have to come back from the future to prepare yourself to go forward.
Yep. Yep. It's absolutely nuts. Like that's one of the things I've learned, just years in real estate is the county has tons of control. Do you know why they have that control?
No.
So the reason they have the control is because banks lend money on real estate. And so banks have to have the state involved to enforce the loans. And so when you have a bank loan, then you end up having, the county can charge property taxes and all that kind of stuff because it's in their jurisdiction. They're enforcing that first lien position. Once your property's paid off, there is a process you can go through with the county. It's not a land patent. It's a process you can go through with the county to basically stop paying the property taxes, but you have to own the property completely free and clear. And nobody teaches this. The county is never going to hold a workshop on how to get out of your property taxes. Never going to happen, right? But it's completely like you and I, Lisa, know people who have gone decades without paying their property taxes using the method that we do. It's not a land patent for those of you out there that think that. It's probably, anyways, it is pretty interesting. Did you know that we had a community member that their family had it out with the state of Georgia and their county over a tree house?
No.
You ever heard this? So our community member, her son was a fellow J6er with me. In fact, that's who this is that I'm going to play. He was a January 6er, and let me pull it up here. They built a tree house. They have 100 acres, and they built a tree house, and he went down to the county to, permit it and everything like that. And they had it out with him. So he made a little video about it. Here it is.
4 years ago, we asked the county if we needed a permit to build a treehouse, and they said no. My dad always taught me don't sell past the close, so I took that answer and went full send on the treehouse build. And then the county shows up unannounced and uninvited to inspect a totally different structure that we had pulled a permit for, one that we never even built. And they said, "What is that?" And I was like, "Bruh, it's the treehouse." They were all like, "That's an illegal structure," and I was like, however, they did agree to issue a permit if we brought in a structural engineer. So we found one, hired one, had some plans drawn up, shook hands with the county, and agreed to meet on August 1st, 2023. But before that meeting in July, the county called the independent power company and told them to cut off our power, which they did, even though every bill was paid. No power, no water. We're kind of off grid. There's no city water here. So they literally cut off our water supply. On a totally unrelated note, anybody have a used D8, a bunch of steel plating, and about 5 tons of concrete? What followed was 2 weeks of fighting just to get the power turned back on. Then 2 years of the county putting up roadblock after roadblock of things that were not legally required, clearly trying to make us quit. So we jumped through every hoop, and then they threatened to cut off our power again for not having a permit while literally actively denying us a permit. So my dad, who's Italian and may or may not be in the mafia, I don't know, went down to the planning and zoning director's office and said, "Hey, we're gonna have a little talk." Shortly after that, we had the permit in hand. And now they actually want me to make my 800 square foot treehouse 50% larger, which really is just to raise the property taxes. Permits are just government overreach. They're just more ways to squeeze money out of us and keep control. And yes, we do have an allodial title to this land. Disclaimer, I didn't point a gun at anybody. 4 years ago, we asked the county if we needed a permit to build a treehouse, and they said,
Anyways, that's pretty good. That's our community member that's their son. I thought that was really fun. I kind of was in the background while they were going through that. He and I are both January 6ers. He spent a year in prison. I spent 14 months in prison. Actually, I don't think he did the full year because he got out on probation. But either way,
Gosh.
Can we build a treehouse? Sure. And then they come out. What is that?
Dang.
I had an almost identical situation out here in Washington State. I had a client who was building a treehouse, and it's actually a huge treehouse. It was 2 separate tree houses. They were going to Airbnb them, and they got into building them. And then the county was like, whoa, hold on. And yeah, they had to go through all kinds of permitting and all kinds of stuff to, make it right.
Control it.
It's control. It's exactly what it is. It's control. And if you don't know how to deal with the county as far as, enforcing your rights, then you're kind of stuck. And they will strong arm you. Like I'm not here saying people should just go out and start doing whatever the heck they want on their land. It's like pretty idealistic, but if you're willing to take on the fight, you can take it on. These guys did. They took on the fight and they got it. And they went back and forth. Like that whole issue of getting the power and water cut off. What that did was it prevented them from getting the inspection. And it was like, but you guys are the ones that called them and told them to close it off. It's really nuts.
I love how you went about doing the power of inquiry on the development you were doing for the RV park when they said they wouldn't permit it for more slots. And you just said, why? Where's this coming from? You challenged them.
So before I went to prison, after I was indicted, before I went to prison, there was a client we had that had us come out and design. He started the process of us designing a septic system on what was zoned commercial property to put in an RV park. Well, a couple days before he was going to close on the property with seller financing from the seller, he got into a car accident and unfortunately passed away. So I gave it about a week for appropriate mourning because I knew the seller and the buyer were friends. And I called up the seller and I said, hey, we went out there and did the septic look at it. And if you're still interested in selling that property, I'd be interested in buying it. So we went out, shook hands, did the whole thing. Took us a good year to go. We got the deal under contract and everything, but it took us about a year to get the septic design and everything done. But what we did, we wanted to put, it's almost 10 acres, and we wanted to put 100 RV slots on it for this RV park. It's a great location. It was just down the road, it's 20 miles down the road, but it's the road that goes to the national park, Olympic National Park. And so, it's right off the highway, got your RV, drive up the road, go do your hiking, all that kind of stuff. So it was really great location. It's right off the highway 101. And the way it works in Washington State is if you're generating over 3,500 gallons of septic per day, you have to do what's called a large on-site septic system, or as we lovingly call them, turd farms. And but they're regulated by the state. They have to be inspected monthly. You have to do it's a higher standard when you have that much sewage because you're basically running a small sewer plant. And so what we did was we're like, well, we're residential guys and we want to keep it in the jurisdiction of the county. And so we decided to, instead of doing one large septic system, we wanted to do, I think, 8 small septic systems and tie 14 of the RVs into each one. So we were well under the daily max per system, and we ran it by the county, and the county said, yeah, that sounds great. It stays in our jurisdiction. We get the revenue, and you guys can go. So we went ahead and designed it that way. And in the meantime, I guess one specific lady at the county decided, I don't like that. I'm uncomfortable with that. I've never done a project like this. I want you to run it through the state. And we're like, well, we're not going to run it through the state because we can't design it. We can't run it. It's a whole other It's a whole other ball of wax, right? And we're like, and you gave us approval, and we can't find anywhere in the code if we do it this way that says we can't. It's any individual system that's over 3,500 gallons, not per lot or per, ownership project or anything like that. So we had to, inquire, can you show us the code where we're not allowed to do this? And they couldn't come back and show us the code. They said, so is there anything that stops us from doing that? And basically their answer was this, and I'm going to paraphrase the paragraph, our competence. That was the county's response. What prevents us from doing it this way? Our competence. We've never done it. We're not sure. And right? There's a first time for every skyscraper. You know what I mean? Hello, you got to let us try it. And we can't see any reason why you couldn't. I mean, if this was separate lots, you would let us do it. No problem. Just think of it like that. So we kept running into problems because they kept trying to group it. And we're like, no, you need to look at these applications individually in these zones. And we finally did get it through. And then at one point they came back. And when you're designing a commercial property like that, there's a fork in the road. You either do a certain way of design or you do another way. There's just a fork where you have different standards for setbacks and stuff. Well, we took the fork where the county had jurisdiction, and it was we were totally good with it, and we had certain stormwater requirements and stuff. Well, they wanted us to take this other fork, but the problem was that other fork would have led us to the loss system, but they were allowing us to do the smaller systems but wanted us to do setbacks and everything like it was a different commercial system. So we were hearing, and we had to say, is, we can't find any reason why we can't design it this way. For whatever reason, you guys want us to do it this way, and we're actually not a big enough project to justify that side, not just on the septic, but the other stuff. And so again, but with that, they were like, well, we'll approve it today if it's 70 units instead of 100. Well, when you're doing a commercial project and you're based off potential cash flow, losing 30 rental slips is like, hello, now my ROIs don't work, my cap rate's not right, my financing's not going to run. You're lopping off almost a third of my park. And so we stood firm on it, and they were giving us, in person, like verbally, this will never work. You've got to do it 70 units. And we just kept saying, but why, but why, but why, but why? And they could never say why other than, well, we're not competent to do 100. We're scared, kind of a thing. And so we ended up getting 100. The thing's built, it's rented out, it's all good. But yeah, it was just like any project, it was like a 4-year project to finally get it all done.
But I think that the nuance in questioning, inquiring, as opposed to arguing and getting, emotional, like that's a lot of what we do in our community, teaching people how to be in the world in another way that is so much more peaceful.
Yeah, it is. And that's one of the things, all my years doing real estate, one of the things I found was bureaucrats, right, are basically just glorified secretaries. They rarely have discretion. In fact, a lot of their laws are shall issue permit, shall issue, which means 14th Amendment, equal treatment under the law. You can't discriminate for me on any reason other than the project, right? If I don't meet the requirements that you guys have set aside and voted on, then you can not approve the project. But if I check all the boxes, they don't really have discretion. If I meet the setbacks and meet the sewer treatment and blah, 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 they have to issue the permit. But a lot of bureaucrats and a lot of building departments and planning departments and a lot of these different places, they want to exercise control. I don't know how to describe it other than unrighteous dominion. They feel like they own the county and it's your privilege to live there. And I never saw this better than one time I had a client who was building on a road. It wasn't far out of town, but the county didn't have enough transformers to extend power supply down this dirt road. Well, they created all these lots and they had all been sold. So all these people had these lots thinking that all they had to do was, put in the power and drill a well and away they go. That's normally how it works. They don't create the lots unless they have the power for them. Well, the Puget Sound Energy, I guess this was Public Utility District number 4 or something like that. We're like, we don't have enough transformers, so we're not going to get power down that road for 20 years. They had some ridiculous amount of time because they would have had to trench the road. There was a lot of work that would have had to been done to do that. And my client was like, well, I'm not going to wait 20 years to build on my property. And he's a meteorologist. And he's like, tell you what, I'm just going to do a solar panel farm and I'm going to do battery banking. So he spent the money, had it engineered, had a big solar panel array, had a whole shed that was just full of batteries. So he was never going to run out of power. He had it all figured out. And he applied for the permits and the county rejected it just outright. Nope, can't build a house unless you can get power and water and sewer. And if you can't get power, you can't get water and sewer. And so he appealed to the state. And, in the state of Washington, there's a lot of people that build cabins up in the mountains that don't have power. And the state was like, actually, if the city or the county can't provide power, that's not enough reason to prevent somebody from building.
Nice.
And so, but they had an email that they sent to him say, we won't allow any kind of building or any development where you don't hook up to the grid because it's not good for the quote. This was the words in the county's email. It's not good for the collective.
Yeah, I was going to say these are billing opportunities.
Well, but the collective, who's the collective?
Yeah,
this is my private property. What are you talking about, the collective?
Yeah, that's not how they see it.
Like, what are you talking about, the collective? What is this, Soviet Union? Hey, comrade. And so, anyways, the county came back and said, no, he can build a solar array. We let cabins do it all the time. So they forced the county to say yes. And that's the thing. They will say yes if you force their hand. And so they said yes. And so we were there installing the septic and he was putting up these big solar panels. But I just thought that was like, you gotta try. You have to compel these people to say yes. Don't take no for an answer. get into the code. And right now with AI, it's so easy to say, review the codes for such and such and, find a loophole for me. And they usually will. I had another instance where I got a call from a client. The guy was a Japanese guy, barely spoke English. And he owned this lot in the city limits of Seattle. It's kind of in their north, one of the subdivisions north of the city, but it was in the city limits. So we had to go through the city of Seattle building department, which is like floor number 40 in one of those skyscrapers downtown. It was hilarious to get the permits or to go talk to them. You had to they opened their doors at 10 a.m. So you had to show up about 9:30, no later than that. What you did was you went in and you told the door guard that you were going to a floor up above it. So you went in, took the elevator up to like the 41st floor, and then you waited there. And as soon as 10 o'clock rolled around, you jumped in the elevator and dropped a floor and went in and got in front of the line. Because if you waited until 10 and then got in the elevator from the bottom floor and went up, there were about 300 people in line.
That's funny.
So contractors knew the trick. We were like, go in, get up high, and then drop down the floor and go in. And then when all the people off the street show up, they're like, how did these people get in? We were in line down there. So anyways, we went in there and this guy called me. He had a lot and he had enough room on the lot that he wanted to put what they call a DADU, a detached additional dwelling unit. And basically he wanted to have, the house and then the DADU. Well, the DADU wasn't the problem. The problem was he wanted to put in a manufactured house in the city limits of Seattle. And he'd already bought the manufactured house before he had the permits or anything. He saw a good deal and went and bought it. Well, the city of Seattle decades ago passed some law or some ordinance that said that they weren't going to allow any manufactured houses in the city limits at all anymore. And that got challenged. Somebody tried to do it and challenged it, went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court came back and said, if it has a HUD tag, housing and urban development, they've approved it for housing, a house is a house is a house. They have to allow them. So the city of Seattle was like, okay, well, if we have to allow them, what we can do is we can determine what they have to apply for in the permits to do it. And we can make it so overburdensome that nobody will ever want to or be able to put in a double or a manufactured.
Gosh.
So I got a hold of the building codes. I saw what was required. Basically, we had to go through all the hoops that a normal single family residence would. And so we did that. We called up the manufactured home dealer. We paid extra money for actual architecture. We paid paid for the engineering on it. Make sure we had the engineering. Like we did everything you had to do for a normal stick built for this, turned it all in, and it took us about 18 months start to finish, which is a really long time for residential permits. Especially because we did everything. Like it wasn't slow, but they kept coming back like, are you sure? It was like, yep, push it through. We did get the approval. So then we installed the manufactured house. Every time, because in city of Seattle, there's an inspection for like, okay, we see you. Can you come inspect? Hey, you know what I mean? Hey, we dropped off some materials. Can you come inspect? Hey, we put up the silt fence. Like there's tons of inspections. Every time an inspector came out, they were like, what's going on here? This isn't right. What's going on? They were like reviewing their paperwork. Like, they'd never seen a manufactured home in the city limits of Seattle. And every single one of them, their gut reaction was, we were doing something wrong, and had to review the permits. And they were all like, how'd you get this? It's like, we didn't even have to bribe anybody, man. We just applied. But I'll never forget, we were doing the construction during COVID, and Seattle had just lost their minds with COVID, right? So we're construction guys. We're out there. We're like doing masonry blocks for the skirting. There's concrete dust, and we're not wearing masks. Like we're outside. Okay. Inspector comes on. She wouldn't even walk on the property till we put on a mask, and we didn't even have any. So we were like,
yeah,
no, that doesn't work. That doesn't qualify. We're like, all right. So we went and got bandanas or walked down to the gas station and bought some masks or something. Outside inspection, right? She wouldn't even walk on the property unless we had masks. It was the stupidest thing I've ever been a part of.
People really got off on their newfound ability to exercise authority during COVID.
Oh, it was absolutely bonkers, man. It was the wildest thing.
It was disgusting. It's like, really? You have that much of a need to have power over others? It was really...
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, let's take a quick break right now because I want to talk about Rumble Wallet. So at 1776, we're constantly dealing with we're constantly dealing with cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin specifically, that's my favorite. And we're always talking about how to put them in trust and stuff like that. Here's a little inside scoop that many creators are talking about behind the scenes. It's actually one of the reasons why I'm using Rumble and why we're here on Rumble. They made a way to super chat creators who get paid immediately without any fees. YouTube, Twitch can take up to 50% fees when you tip creators. This method takes none. That's right. The platform takes zero fees. I keep nearly 100% of what you send me, and you can super chat with Bitcoin, Tether USD, or even Tether Gold stablecoins. The tip will show up directly in our Rumble chat, which I'll do my best to read. All you need to do is download the Rumble wallet on the App Store and send the tips to your favorite creators. You can to Rumble wallet. You can to wallet.rumble.com, or you can download the app directly from the app stores. Seriously, what an amazing way to get rid of the middleman and help the creator economy. Shout out to Rumble for making this disruptive technology. And it's not just to tip creators. The Rumble wallet is a great way to have custody of your Bitcoin on your phone. You get all the passwords and everything. So I highly recommend, if you're interested in cryptocurrencies, Rumble Wallet is a very low barrier of entry, very easy way to do it. They don't do any know your client, KYC, which banks do and stuff like that. So it really is a private wallet. I think so, at least. Okay, so that out of the way, let's add you back onto the stage, Lisa. I like to do those when we get a chance. I'm supposed to do so many every month. And shoot, if I could do them during Liberty Lounge, that's just great.
Absolutely. I would love to ask you to go back a little bit and review and tell this audience, because during Peasants Perspective, you never talk about your real estate background. Tell this audience how deep your real estate background is and all of the different licenses. We're talking about licensing, right? Broker fee, all the background that you've had and how you help apply it in our class.
So when I was in college, one of my first jobs I got was as a mortgage broker. I worked for Academy Mortgage, and I worked for a guy who was really into mortgages, like understanding the underwriting and stuff like that. And this is back in the subprime days where, if you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan. And he handed me this manual that he wrote. It was spiral bound, he wrote it, spiral bounded. It was like 1.5 inches thick. And I read the whole thing, basically how mortgages work, how they're originated, how they're underwritten, all the different terms and vocabulary. It was this massive manual. I wasn't like a prolific mortgage broker. I did a couple loans for some college kids buying townhouses and some investor that was flipping a house. I think I helped my dad refinance his house. And but I was getting a degree in political science, and I had other jobs at the same time. So I was working night shift at Super 8. So I was managing a motel. So I kind of got to see the inner workings of how a hotel runs and is managed and stuff like that. And then I also got a job as a low voltage electrician. And this was kind of a weird deal. I got it on a whim, but it was money. And I was a low voltage electrician, and I was the only guy in Idaho that was there. That's why they hired me. I was in Idaho. And the city I was in, Rexburg, Idaho, they were building a new part of the hospital, like a whole huge wing. And so we did the HVAC, building management, heating and air. I did the Twin Falls Mormon Temple. I did a prison down in Rigby, Idaho. And my job was to run all the wiring. Basically, from the day construction started, I was there putting in conduit. All the way to the very end, I was there programming the thermostats, right? So I was a part of the construction from start to finish. So I got to see, here's the lending and how money works. And, oh, yeah, by the way, here's where that money goes and how it pays the builders and draws. And then I got my degree in political science, and my plan was to do something else. But it was the first year of the recession, and nobody could get work. And I saw, there was a series of things that happened, but I saw a Hummer that pulled up to my apartment complex, and it had writing on the window that said, if you didn't make 20 grand last month, call. And it had a phone number. And this cute little girl jumped out, and she was like a cheerleader. Like, I'm thinking, is that daddy's Hummer? Like, you can't be more than 18, 19 years old. And I was like, hey, what's up with the 20 grand a month? And she goes, oh, my husband and I invest in real estate, and we flip houses, and you should call him. So I was like, okay. So I called him. And he invited me out to a meeting really similar to like what we do with Ignite. And it was about real estate education. So I ended up doing the real estate education. It was a 2-year program. And in the process of doing that, I learned how to flip houses. So like my first year, we started doing short sales and some subject twos. And we ended up doing like 28 houses, just me and a couple partners. And so I got into I was a mortgage broker, and then I was a low voltage electrician building, and then I got into real estate as a flipper, short seller, that kind of thing. And eventually it took me from Idaho down to Utah for a short time, to Boise, Idaho, and then eventually up here to Washington. I was chasing the real estate market. I got up here to Washington, and I just kept doing real estate, short sales mostly. But then short sales, the realtors got in on the game. When I started doing short sales, we'd call the bank, negotiated a discount price from the mortgage because it was overvalued to the market rate, right? And realtors would tell us that was against the law. You can't do that. It's got to go to foreclosure first. And we're like, we're doing it. Like, we're doing it. We're closing, we're closing and selling. We're the only ones making money. You guys are all telling your clients they have to lose money. We can at least take it off their hands before it goes to foreclosure. And, but then pretty soon it became ubiquitous in the real estate industry. If you were a realtor, you were doing short sales, because in some markets, it was like 60-70% of listings they owed more than what the market value was. And so then it became like too cool. And there was no niche anymore for us, because literally like every retail buyer was trying to do a short sell, and they don't ask for as deep a discounts as investors do. And so that led me to the foreclosure auctions. So we started flipping houses at the foreclosure auctions. All in all, by the time I was done doing the foreclosure auctions, I think we'd done well over 250 houses. I stopped counting at some point. You just can't keep track of it. And always with investors, always helping other people. I was one of the guys that had the brains and the know-how, and usually partnered up with people who had the money and no time and no know-how. And we made it work. But then, and during that time period, I also had my realtor's license, and I also ended up getting my contractor's license, because what happened was at the foreclosure auctions towards, I want to say like 2012, 2011, somewhere around that time frame, the market had recovered enough, but it was still pretty rock bottom, that real estate investment trusts and real estate private equity funds coming from New York started showing up at the auctions in Washington State, Pierce County, King County, Kitsap County, the counties I was working in. So, we used to buy houses never more than about 70 cents on the dollar, oftentimes much less than that if it needed work. But they were paying retail for junk. Like, they were paying market value for junk, and they weren't flipping them. They were just putting them in a portfolio and sitting on them for a couple of years. But all of a sudden we were, went from buying 1-2 houses a week, 4 sometimes, to 0, 0, 1, 0, 0. We were bidding these guys up. Like, we were making sure they were paying retail, but it's high risk to bid people up, because every now and then one would drop on you, and I watched some guys pay like 90 cents on the dollar when the bank would or the private equity would back out, and they were like, yeah, we can't do this forever, because we were trying to chase them out. Well, you can't chase out people that come with billions of dollars.
Yeah.
So that led me to get my contractor's license, because we just jumped into spec building, because you could buy lots super cheap, and we were just like, we'll just throw houses on them. Like, why not? And we'd done, so much rehab. It's like building wasn't a problem. Subcontracting wasn't a problem. So we did spec houses, and then that led me to ultimately buy an excavation business and end up getting my septic installer and design license. So then I became like a developer. We did not only residential development for just homeowners that were, wanting to build a house, but we started applying for the permits. We started facilitating the permit application for our clients. And then we started doing some subdivisions. We did 2 pretty big subdivisions here in Kitsap County. And that was what I was doing up until I got arrested for January 6th. It was just property development. And it was great. But yeah, lots of, when it comes to single family residential, whether it's just a lot being developed or whether it's a subdivision, I've done, I think, all of it. I've done rezoning. I've done every permit that you need for stuff like that. And so, yeah.
And being able to put the pieces together for the majority of people, it's all kind of compartmentalized, the real estate part, the mortgage part, the development part, the investing in or flipping and all of that. And then, like we were talking about cryptocurrency, the privacy part, trusts, the stuff that we do in 1776 Live, and how you said you had wished you were doing those strategies throughout your...
Yeah. I did get my insurance license along the way in that process. I never sold insurance. I got my license though, so I learned all the stuff we were supposed to learn. Yeah, the thing that there were a couple different times where I would add up, how much real estate did we do in the last 12 months? And it was, tens of millions of dollars in real estate. And of course, how much profit, millions and millions of dollars. And it would, I got my commissions and I got my percentages and stuff like that, but it was fleeting. You're paying taxes, you're paying fees, you're plowing it back into your corporations because you've got to make a profit and stuff like that. And it just kind of, even after all those deals and all that time, it was like there wasn't a lot to show for it. And I talk to real estate investors like this all the time. Like, you might end up with a wad of cash, but just the way we did it, I didn't end up with like a portfolio of property, because even when we keep a property as a rental, typically 2 years later, we had to bail out of it for one reason or another, and either get the equity to move on to a big flip we were trying to do, or, the client, a lot of times were partnerships. The client wanted their equity and we couldn't buy them out, so we'll just sell the property. But had we utilized trust vehicles, we could have captured a lot of that. And we could
I feel like
trust.
I feel like the way the system is set up, you're always playing the game of tax avoidance, right? It's like when you have a corporation, you want to spend the money so you don't have to pay taxes on it, right? So you're constantly spending, as opposed to looking at things from a different perspective where you aren't necessarily going to cause a tax event if you hold the property in a trust, right?
Well, and you realize when you're doing that, like, all through the 20 years that I was doing that, you realize that the IRS and the tax system they don't care about the money. Like, just be frank. They have magic money printers in the sky. They do not care about the money. They'll print it for whatever they want. What they care about is control. So, like, if you're going to go buy a work vehicle and you start looking at the tax code, they want you to buy one that's over 6,000 but under 12,000 pounds, and it's got to be made here, and it's got to have, this energy efficiency thing, and it's got to run on ethanol, or it's got to, it's like, so you're in order for you to get a write-off, you've got to buy a certain couple products. What I couldn't buy was the truck that would have been better for us, which was a small dump truck, because it didn't qualify for the small pickup write-off, because it would have been a large pickup and we would have only gotten a 25% write-off on it. And so you start making decisions based on credits or based on deductions. Same thing when we would do rehabs. It was like, hey, this is a piece of garbage property in a freaking ghetto in Tacoma, and it needs a new hot water heater. Should we go down to Walmart and buy the $350 one? It's like, no, go buy the $1,200 one, because it's a quote energy efficient one, and then we can write off the $1,200. And it was like, but so we'd spend more to get a couple extra bucks in write-offs, and it's like they were incentivizing you to build with certain products, go green, and all these different things through the tax code. And it's exhausting, because you do find yourself like making decisions based on tax avoidance rather than based on what's best for your business.
Yeah. And you said one day, and I think we produced a podcast, stop starting over again.
Yeah.
You're constantly reorganizing yourself to figure out a better way, and you can't get ahead. It is set up literally so you can't get ahead, if it's a control mechanism or billing opportunities, whatever it is, until you start putting these pieces together of privacy and trust and equity. And this real estate piece that you bring is profound, because that's the structure that it builds that generational wealth.
Yeah. That's the thing. There's T. Andrew Coleman. He said, we've got to be kidding ourselves. And he was the IRS commissioner back in the 50s. So he was the IRS commissioner. He'd been around for 50 years by the time he showed up. He says, we've got to be kidding ourselves. People don't understand the buying power of success, which is, to keep your wealth and pass it on generationally. He says, people don't understand the buying power of success. And then he goes on to say, we've punished them by income taxing. We punish success by income tax. The more you make, the higher your tax bracket, right? And through death and estate taxes, we force every generation to start over again. Yeah. What led to the Gilded Age was a couple things, but first and foremost was Andrew Jackson killed the central bank. And then that led to a 4-year depression, because the economy had to reset. And then it led to an unbelievable amount of growth, because currency was decentralized, banking was decentralized. It was based on honor, and you'd go in, dress up, go talk to your banker, get a loan. They knew you, they believed in your project, and it led to the Gilded Age. But it also led to unbelievable amounts of success for families like the Rockefellers or the Carnegies, American Oil, the railroads. And so then comes along the Progressive Era.
Oh, you froze. It's so fascinating to hear how this steps up with all these people that we are so familiar with, these names, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers. Like, they had it all figured out. They weren't starting all over again. We lost Taylor. He'll come back. I have faith. He wouldn't leave me all by myself here with all you guys. I wish you guys would come into the studio.
I'm
Here
back.
he comes.
Are you back?
There he is. Yay.
Okay,
I'm here.
So familiar with the families that we've heard?
The Carnegies, the Rockefellers, yeah.
Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, you throw them in there too. And so the Progressive Era, right? Teddy Roosevelt, the trust busters, and they went around and they wanted to bust these trusts. And here's the truth of the matter. Those guys, Rockefellers, Carnegies, they were bigger than the United States government. They controlled more resources. They controlled more land. They could shut off the GDP to the country. That's how powerful they were. So I understand for the people why you'd want to do some trust busting, because, they were basically just these ginormous monopolies. But they did it through trusts, which is why they call it trust busting. And then that led to the corporate era. We talk about this in 1776 Live quite a bit. And I encourage everybody to come to the Ignite presentation and get involved with the community, because, to understand your history kind of helps you understand where you're at now.
Yeah. So you just mentioned that. So 4:30 Pacific Standard Time, Thursdays, we have a weekly meeting and we kind of dive into what 1776 Live is all about.
Yep.
So please come.
Yeah. So you were mentioning, right, we were talking about all these incentive programs, and it made me think of this quote right here. Let me throw this up here. This is from Ayn Rand from Atlas Shrugged. And it says in the book, it says, do you really think that what we want those laws to be observed? Do you really think that we want those laws to be observed? Sorry, guys, I can't read today. We want them broken. There's no way to rule innocent men. The only power any government has is the power to crack down on criminals. Well, when there aren't enough criminals, one makes them. One declares so many things to be a crime that it becomes impossible for men to live without breaking laws. Who wants a nation of law-abiding citizens? What's there in that for anyone? But just pass the kind of laws that can neither be observed, nor enforced, nor objectively interpreted, and you create a nation of lawbreakers, and then you can cash in on guilt, right? And that's what I see a lot of times. When we go back to that first image with all the licensing, it's like, how did we do this? It's, cashing in on your guilt. You know what I mean? They make laws for everything, and they can enforce them when they want to, when they don't. If the park ranger's out, he'll catch it for fishing. If not, fish away. It's insanity, but there's a rule for everything. When you're on what you think is your own private property, it ain't so private, is it? Everything you do, you have to have permission.
And even if they haven't even if it's not a law, with what happened with COVID, they started pushing things that were mandates as if they were laws and telling you that you're breaking the law. Like, you didn't have your mask on. You can't go to school. You can't do this. You can't do that. It's insane.
Yeah, we got to see some real tyranny and some heavy hands come out during COVID. And I hope we don't forget it. I hope it takes us a couple generations to forget that. I hope people resist.
Was it Peasants Perspective this week? You played a clip of "Don't Ever Forget What They Did."
Yeah.
Oh, what you got to play that. That was so good. If you've got it.
Oh man, I don't know if I don't have it handy. I'd have to go dig for it. But yeah, like, you can't forget what these people tried to do. And it's crazy because now we're finding out how much of a scam COVID was. Literally, like the virus, what they told us about it, the vaccines, the masks, the social distancing, all of it, everything, top to bottom. There was nothing about it that wasn't a scam, And yet people's lives were destroyed. Marriages were wrecked. Families were ruined. People didn't get to go to grandparents' funerals, couldn't visit them in their last days. Businesses were closed. Bankruptcies happened. Where's the restitution? Where's the recompense for that? Instead, Anthony Fauci just got a pardon, and we're supposed to move on.
He got a pardon from the auto pen.
Yeah. And then you get into it deeper. Obviously, as a January 6th, I'm pretty sensitive to the whole election thing, but it's like the whole thing with the COVID emergency orders to suspend state election constitutions, to change the election protocols without any legislatures involved, any voters involved, just literally secretaries of state being like, we're doing mail-in balloting. Oh, and we're going to consolidate, instead of counting the ballots in every elementary school gym where you go to vote, we're taking them all to the convention center, and we're doing it all in one central place. Anytime you centralize anything, hello, communists, the collective, So
what is your opinion with what we're facing now? We want the Save America Act. We want people, I'm not going to break it down, but what are we looking at, in your opinion, for people to be able to vote and prove their citizenship? We're getting close. I mean, it's March.
So the way I look at the Save America Act, it primarily deals with proving you're a citizen to register and proving you're a citizen to vote, right? So it's the 2 times, once when you register, once when you go to drop off your ballot. And it's supposed to eliminate mail-in ballots too, because mail-in ballots is just there's no chain of custody. The fraud is just off the charts.
Yeah.
One of the podcast listeners that listened all the way 5 years ago when we first started, he's actually changed his job since then, but he was a postman out in Kansas, right? And he flat out told us, he says, I know mail carriers that are purposely hiding ballots in their trucks and waiting till after election day because they know those people they're picking up ballots from are Republicans. He says, I know that's happening. I encouraged him to be a whistleblower. He's like, man, I don't know if it's worth it, because the election's already over, but I know that happened. And it was like, you can't trust the post office. You can't trust the chain of custody if you don't go in and pull the levers and, put your ink in. And so, in fact, there's a law from 1899 that says that you can only have ballots that are handwritten or levers. You can't have anything else. And that law has never been stricken, which means all of these electronic machines, that they never overrode that law. They all can't be certified by that law. Anyways, but
what about the what was it? The marking on the ballots? There was
it's everything. There's nothing about it, right? If you can't control who registers, you can't control the universe of ballots that are created. So you look at some of these blue states, and it's like you registered 1 million people in the state of Illinois from 2018 to 2020. It's like there weren't 1 million people that moved there. So if you can't control the universe of ballots by, controlling who registers, then you can't control how many ballots are printed. And if you don't control who comes in and actually votes, then you can generate those ballots any way you want as long as they get into the tabulators. There's no tracking because there's no connection from the envelope or the ballot and the person, right? It's just a ballot. Like that's supposed to be a blind ballot. So once the ballot's counted, you can't go back and go, oh, this person's illegal. Let's pull their ballot out of the stack. It's gone. And then add on top of that, the actual vote fraud in the machines and the manipulations, which I'm a firm believer that that's happening. It's a no-win situation. So if the Save America Act gets passed, that forces voter rolls to get cleaned up. It forces identification and eliminates the mail-in balloting. That right there is like half the battle. Then on the other end, I'm almost certain from the tea leaves I'm reading that the Dominion voting machines, the Smartmatic, ES&S, Hart, Diebold, all of them, what's going to end up happening with those is Trump will do an executive order declaring a national emergency based on foreign interference, and he'll basically say all of those have got to go. So if they can get the Save America Act passed, then he can do an emergency order based on national security that's pretty undeniable for that.
So what if they don't pass the Save Act? Can't he still do an executive order?
This is what, this is the criticism. He's written many executive orders. They just go ignored, right? Like somebody has to enforce them. And if you've only got a political operative at the top of the department and nobody's willing to enforce it, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And so, politics is politics. Like just because he's president doesn't mean he's the dictator. Like he still gets held up by the courts. He still gets held up by the senators. He still gets, he's got to act within his capacity, because if he breaks too many eggs, then he'll get impeached. And if he, you know what I mean? At the same
Well,
time,
they're going to impeach him anyway. This midterm is so important.
oh yeah. Did you hear about CNN had their Harry Enton, their pollster on? This is pretty funny. I'll show you this. Anytime somebody talks to me about the Democrats losing the election and they don't clarify it with if the Save America Act isn't passed, anytime someone's like, well, the Democrats are going to win the midterms as if it's some kind of given, I just think you guys are absolutely nuts. So let me show you this here. I got to remove this and then add this.
I'm going to turn some lights on. It's getting very dark in here.
Okay, so let me add this to the stage. Okay.
How are voters feeling about Democrats right now?
Yeah, I mean, Democrats in the minds of the American public are lower than the Dead Sea. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look. The net approval rating for Democrats in Congress, you said it, Kate Baldwin, the lowest ever. Look at this. Overall, they are 55 points underwater. Their approval rating is south of 20%. It's even worse when you look at independents. Look at this. Negative 61 points. That means that their approval rating is 61 points lower than their disapproval rating. Quinnipiac has been polling this question for the better part of the 21st century. They have never found Democrats, at least those in Congress, in worse shape than they are right now.
So anytime someone's like, well, the Republicans are going to lose the midterms, I'm like, only if they cheat.
That's right.
They're not popular. They can't win elections. Now, Republicans got to get out and vote. But even when people are like, Republicans don't show up enough to vote, I'm like, we show up enough, but you're not showing us that our vote is being counted appropriately. Like, that's really demotivating for a conservative voter. Anyways, that's my thing. Like, if anybody says, oh, they're going to lose the midterms because of Iran. Oh, another poll came out. Trump's more popular now than Bush, Obama, basically every president in our lifetime at this stage. Shocker. Oh, guess what? Everything he's done in Iran, wildly popular. Could never tell on MS Now. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think America's behind him completely, but you've got to secure the election because you have these loose, it's what was Senator Kennedy calls them loose chickens, right? It's like, you've got to secure these elections. Washington State, Colorado, Illinois, these are states that absolutely could flip Republican.
Oh,
absolutely.
please.
In fact, the only states that Kamala Harris won were the states that did all mail-in balloting and no voter ID. They're the only states she won. So just that alone could change it all. The Democrats are only running on orange man bad.
Yeah, it's true. They have no ideas.
Yeah. So anybody who's like, oh, the Republicans are going to lose the midterm if Trump doesn't change course. It doesn't matter what Trump does at this point. Nobody wants to elect a Democrat unless you're an illegal immigrant, a pedophile, a criminal, you know what I mean? Unless you're one of these niche, tiny little 1, 2, 3, 4% segments of the population, which, by the way, all fight each other. Like LGBTQ plus TIA movement and the Islam movement are not compatible.
No. And it's so weird what's going on in the infighting, and like the Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes is, insane.
I saw this great meme that was showing clips of Trump talking about going after Iran all the way back to like 88.
Oh yeah.
What he was going to do and all this stuff. And someone said the comment, Trump didn't leave MAGA, because that's the thing. Oh, Trump's guy, he's not MAGA, he's not America first.
No way.
Trump didn't leave MAGA. MAGA left him. Like, he's been saying the same thing and going to do the same thing the whole time. But a lot of people projected in what they wanted. Oh, I'm on Maha. Well, you got to let glyphosate, the glyphosate executive.
I sincerely think they're such shallow. They don't understand the depth of draining the swamp. I just think I said this on one of our other chats. Draining the swamp is a global effort. They want everything local or, domestic. But we have international interference with the elections. We have international interference with people coming in. Like the level of fraud. Yes, they infiltrated every single institution.
Did you see that the deficit is down 57%?
Yes. And imagine if they got fraud out. We'd balance the budget. Like,
yes, we'd balance the budget.
and everybody's saying you're not getting enough of the illegals out. You know what my husband said? He's like, you know what? They went about this telling we're coming to, Missouri. We're going to come get the illegals. He's like, they need to shut up and go where they're going to go. They don't need to give us the stats.
You know what's better than getting all the illegals out, although that is pretty sweet? I got to tell you, what's better than that is a good steak. Oh, come on.
Go!
Hold on, it's changing on me here. All right, baby. Okay, what's better than that is a good steak. Today's sponsor is Chicago Steak Company, and they're giving away 4 free steaks for every order. Code BPSIR free. That's BPSIR free. Do you ever buy steaks at the grocery store and it's just a total gamble? Are you standing there staring at shrink wrap mystery cuts, trying to figure out which one might actually be decent, and half the time you get home, cook it, and it's just fine, nothing special? Chicago Steak Company is the opposite of that. USDA Prime, an upper choice hand-selected by butchers in Chicago, wet aged 28 to 48 days, vacuum sealed and shipped on dry ice right to your door. Every cut is hand-carved, no guessing. Here's the part I really like. Spend $199 more. Any steaks, your choice. Use code BPSIR free, and they throw in 4 bourbon peppercorn sirloins for free, plus free shipping. These are 6-ounce top sirloins with a cracked peppercorn and bourbon rub. Lean, beefy, bold flavor. Throw them all on a hot grill, and they'll be done in minutes. I love my Pit Boss. That's $160 in free steaks. 15,000 5-star reviews. These guys are the real deal. mychicagosteak.com/rumble. Code BPSIR free. That's BPSIR free. Link in the description. All right. It would be better to get rid of all of the illegal immigrants than have a steak, but we'll take the steak too.
You just made me hungry. We're at our hour mark. I didn't know if you had anything else you wanted to go over, but
I do. I wanted to share this with you guys. So this right here is a quote from the movie The Matrix, and this is really where I've settled. Why things don't change. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged, and many of them are so inured, so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it. Whew, I love that scene. That's the scene where Neo is about ready to take the pill, right? But that's where most people are, is they're just stuck. They're stuck thinking they have to ask permission for everything. They're stuck constantly doing that. I have a friend that shared this video with me the other day. Let me find it here. I have a friend who shared this video with me about 2 weeks ago, and I've been holding on to it ever since. This is his son. His son's about twice this age now. At this point, he's only 6 years old. Okay, but this is what we need. We need more dads like this that teach their sons like this, so that we can take our country back.
Sammy, I just want to tell you something about that. We could just go to Home Depot and buy a bow and arrow, practice with it over time. We don't have to listen to the dumb law. Who cares? They don't make our life choices. We make our life choices. So are we going to let the government control our brain and our life? I don't think so. That's not how my dad is. That's not how I am. Are you with us?
You with us? Because
that's pretty good, isn't it?
That's damn good.
I love that. I love that little kid. He was on my son's basketball team this year. Sweet. Anyways, super fun. Again, right? The government doesn't have to do that stuff. We allow them to do it because a lot of people just don't want to unplug. They'll defend the system thinking it's in their best interest. How many people went up through fits about masks for no reason? So prepare accordingly.
Yeah. And come be with other like-minded folks. It'll help you gain the confidence to ask the questions and to not just go along to get along, but to create the life you want to have and live as privately and empowered as you can.
Absolutely. All right. So we've reached our hour. We're a little over. Thank you so much, you guys, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And I'll be around tomorrow morning, 6:30 a.m. for Peasants Perspective. We'd love for you to join us on Thursday night for our Ignite presentation. Go to 1776live.us and register, and we'll see you there.